The woman had just fallen asleep when several centipedes suddenly fell down. Startled awake, the woman frantically swatted at them. The centipedes crawled into her mouth. Panic ensued. She ran outside to find help, but couldn't speak. She sprayed blood all over the person's face, and then vomited. Everyone retreated in panic. The woman then scratched frantically, and the centipedes crawled onto her arm. The woman painfully tore off some flesh, and the centipedes crawled out. The woman fainted. That same day, Jack was driving with his wife and 3 children to visit the director at the orphanage. Suddenly, the car hit something, a deer. He got back in the car and drove away. However, the one he had actually hit was a little girl. The family quickly arrived at the orphanage. Jack introduced the orphanage to Sasha, and told her how kind the director had been to him. The director looked at Sasha with a seemingly malicious gaze. That night, Jack and his friends went to the car to get something, but saw blood on the front of the car and a tuft of hair. Jack and his friends went to the scene of the incident and found the little girl. Just as Jack was devastated and filled with self-blame, they noticed a bus nearby, with children's corpses crawling with centipedes inside. Jack tried to call the police, but there was no signal. They had to return to the orphanage. Little Fatty asked them where they had been, and they told him to go to the bus. He lifted the white sheet, and there was the little girl. Little Fatty asked them to explain. Jack told Little Fatty what had happened, and Little Fatty decided to go check first, and then drive to the police station. He boarded the bus. The corpse was facing away from him. He was startled, and tried to go forward to check, but the door suddenly closed. He ran to the door, but couldn't open it, and then looked up and saw a familiar woman. A man stepped on an egg, from which countless centipedes crawled out, covering his entire body, entering his mouth, and the chubby boy was sent to hell. Meanwhile, blood flowed from the orphanage kitchen faucet. A crow suddenly fell dead onto the table. A woman, holding a knife, was cutting flesh in front of a mirror. She was extremely satisfied. When she regained consciousness, she was horrified by her own reflection, and fainted. The commander hurriedly carried his wife to the hospital. On the way, they discovered their car was stuck in a loop around the orphanage. Imagined endlessly. Panic erupted, but Jack said that 25 years ago, a room in the orphanage caught fire, and 3 little girls died. They discovered it was a sorceress who was casting spells, and believed she was responsible for the girls' deaths. Fearing they would be next, the 3 of them ran away, but no matter how they escaped, they always ended up back at the orphanage. So they captured the sorceress, and locked her in a room. Finally, the sorceress kept banging her head against the door. When the door was finally opened, the sorceress was dead. They buried her in the room, and sealed it with cement. With no other option, the group returned to the orphanage. Upon arriving at the orphanage, Sasha went to the director's room, and while looking around, discovered a hidden compartment in the floorboards under the bed. The woman found an exquisite box. Upon opening it, she discovered some photographs. She gasped in shock, covering her mouth. She turned to look at the orphanage director. The director glared at her. Sasha showed the photos to Jack. They were of girls from the orphanage. The director had been taking pictures. All the girls had been assaulted by him. The sorceress had wanted to protect the girls. She wanted to cast a spell on the director. Knowing the truth, Jack wanted to strangle the director. Then Jack noticed several more photos in the box. He saw a baby named Yu in the sorceress's arms. Jack immediately remembered that when he buried the sorceress, her daughter was watching from the doorway. As everyone tried to escape, as they left the orphanage, a dark figure appeared. The group fled back inside, but were all controlled by a force. Some had their bodies broken. Others were repeatedly sprayed with boiling water, and even had worms sprouting from their skin. Just then, Yu appeared before Sasha. She manipulated Sasha, wielding a scythe to kill Jack. At the critical moment, the sun stabbed Yu. The mysterious force vanished. Sasha picked up the scythe and swung it at Yu. Her head fell to the ground, and then Yu reattached it. Seeing this, Sasha threw a candle at her, and Yu was instantly engulfed in flames. Jack and his family hurriedly left the room, leaving only the deeply sinful orphanage director behind. A detective is apprehending a criminal. He nearly falls off a roof. His teammates rush to his rescue, but the detective's fear of heights kicks in. He's too afraid to move. His teammates are also exhausted. The protagonist feels extremely guilty, so he quits his job and becomes a private detective. One day, an old classmate contacts him, saying that his wife, Marin, is possessed by a ghost, and hires the detective to investigate. The detective agrees. Marin drives to a flower shop. She picks up a bouquet of flowers, goes to a cemetery, seemingly mourning, then leaves. The detective takes the opportunity to approach a tombstone. It turns out that a woman named Carol is buried there. Marin then goes to an art gallery, gazing at a portrait of a woman, and the flowers in her hand are exactly the same as those in the painting. Even the hairstyle is the same. The detective asks the staff about the painting's origin, and is surprised to learn that the painting is a portrait of a woman named Carol. The detective begins to wonder if ghost possession is real. Marin then enters the hotel. The detective followed her inside. He learned from the receptionist that Marin had registered under the name Carrot. When the detective went upstairs to check, he found the room empty. The car was gone. The receptionist said they hadn't seen anyone come in. The detective clearly remembered seeing Marin through the window. He went to his old classmate's house. He found Marin's car parked outside. The bouquet of flowers was still inside. This meant she had been out. The detective detective found a know-it-all. He asked him who Carrot really was. It turned out she had just given birth when her husband abandoned her. She then committed suicide in despair. The detective went back to his old classmate. He learned that Carrot was actually Marin's great-grandmother. The hotel had once belonged to Carrot, but Marin didn't know her past. She didn't know her great-grandmother. Could Carrot really be possessing Marin? The detective continued to follow Marin. He saw her throw the flowers into the sea. Then, she jumped in. The woman lost consciousness in the water. The detective quickly rescued her and took her home. When Marin woke up, she found herself completely naked. The detective even gave her clothes. Marin, however, didn't know why she had jumped into the sea, as if possessed. The detective then received a call from an old classmate, who warned him to keep an eye on Marin, because Carlotta died at 26, and Marin was also 26. The detective rushed to the living room, only to find Marin had vanished. The next day, she reappeared at the door, apologizing for leaving without saying goodbye. The two then went to the beach. Marin said she had dreamt of a clock tower and a newly dug grave, seemingly a premonition that she would die like Carlotta. She begged the detective to save her. The detective agreed. The detective discovered that the clock tower in her dream actually existed in reality. He led Marin to the clock tower, hoping to help her. But upon seeing the clock tower, Marin went berserk and ran wildly. The detective rushed after her, but his fear of heights flared up again, and he was too late. This time, he couldn't save her life again. The detective felt extremely guilty. He went to his old classmate's house and learned that Marin's car had been sold to a woman, and his classmate had moved away after selling the car. Then he went to the restaurant where he first met Marin and saw a woman walking towards him. Wasn't that Marin, who had died? But suddenly she became a strange woman. It was just a hallucination. The next day, he saw a woman dressed in green. The detective stared intently at her and realized she looked exactly like the deceased Marin. The detective followed her to a hotel and then knocked on the door. The woman, clearly dead, reappeared before him. She seemed not to recognize him. The man learned her name was Judy. Her ID proved she wasn't lying. He invited her to dinner, and she readily agreed. But after he left, Judy's expression became complicated. It turned out it was all a conspiracy. She was Marin's husband's accomplice, impersonating him all along. Judy lured the man to the clock tower, where her husband dumped the real Marin's body, ultimately taking all their joint property. But this imposter Marin fell in love with the man. She initially considered writing to tell him the truth, but ultimately decided to take a gamble. To win his love, she obediently accepted his transformation. The long-dead Marin, finally, using Judy's body, successfully resurrected before the man. She thought she could deceive him forever. But when the man discovered Judy's necklace, which matched the one worn by Carrot in the portrait, he finally realized he'd been fooled by this woman. He took Judy to the clock tower. Judy desperately tried to escape, but the man held her tightly, forcing her to confess her crimes. His perfect image of Marin shattered completely. Judy couldn't help but reveal the truth, saying that it was because she loved him so much that she was willing to stay by his side. She begged the man not to reveal the truth. But suddenly, a dark shadow floated up the clock tower. Judy thought it was a vengeful spirit coming to claim her life, and turned to run away in terror. Will the heartbroken man also end his own life? This is the ending the director left us with, leaving us with much to ponder. A woman steps in red liquid. Her mink coat suddenly attacks her. She barely gets it off in time. The throne coat scuttles away on the ground. A Beatty carriage rolls right over it. While the woman is talking, the carriage moves on its own. She chases after it. It almost hits a car, but the driver stops just in time. The carriage keeps crossing lanes. It reaches a busy intersection. Luckily, it stops suddenly, avoiding being hit. The scared woman grabs the baby. Authorities come to investigate. They drill a big hole in the ground. They find the water full of red liquid. A man tries to get a sample. An unseen force pulls him down. His friend jumps in after him. They all climb out shaken but safe. Now they're covered in pink goo. They start arguing over what happened. One friend takes off his shirt and instantly calms down. Seeing this, the others strip too. All three are back to normal. They go to see the mayor. They tell him about the sewer. He doesn't believe a word. Then pink liquid floods the streets. Ghosts pour out from the goo. Spirits also rise from the salvaged Titanic. The city plunges into chaos. To fight the ghosts, the team blasts the slime with electric pulses. It does nothing. Then the man gets an idea. They spray the pink goo on the Statue of Liberty. The statue comes to life. Directed by the three, the statue smashes into the museum. They rush inside. The pink slime forms into a monster. They attack it. Under massive electric currents, the monster returns to its world. The pink goo fades away. Everyone cheers. The Ghostbusters are now famous. If you want to see more, this movie is called Ghostbusters 2.